If our schools are sick, it's because we're sick. Our society is sick. And if our schools are well, then we're doing something right. Now, I don't pretend there aren't challenges. I won't claim that all public schools serve their students equally well. But I will contend today and tomorrow and forever that the best thing for American students, from those in our high-performing, high-funded suburban schools, to those in rural schools struggling to pay the bills, to those in urban schools struggling valiantly to overcome the pernicious ravages of concentrated poverty that teachers did not create, teachers who, in the newspeak of school reform, are not even allowed to talk about it without being called excuse makers. I contend that the best thing for American students in each one of those contexts is the continuation and preservation of the promise of public education. And I believe it's worth fighting for. I believe that teachers and parents and students who raise their voices and who stand up, who risk their jobs like the teachers in Chicago are doing right now, I believe that these people and their risks and sacrifices are inspirational and heroic. And I want to tell you today that they are not fighting for themselves. And they're not fighting for their schools. And they're not even just fighting for their students. They're fighting for something greater. They're fighting to keep the fading light of American democracy burning. To fend off a new generation of robber barons who the politicians are afraid to enrage. But that lady's not afraid to enrage them. And I'm not afraid. You can't be afraid either. Those teachers and parents and students are fighting bravely to preserve the promise of public education and all public trusts, to extend these promises to all citizens, as we said we would do when we made these promises. When we give up on the promise, what then do we claim? Where do we go for redress of our grievances once we've surrendered our elected school boards and our constitutional guarantees? Do we march into the boardroom of a charter management group or some foundation? School reform, the way it's being presented, is only backed by the assurances and the sweet words of American corporate elite and their spokespeople. But the public education system is backed by the full faith and credit of us, the people of each state. When public education fails to deliver, we can seek redress at the ballot box. We can seek redress through the court systems. And we've been doing it, we'll continue to do it. Public education is our trust fund. It's our nest egg. It belongs to our kids and the kids of our kids, and nobody else can have it. They can't take it away from us without a fight, because we love our kids more than they love their portfolios. As fierce as they are, we will be fiercer. We only have to learn one thing, and that is to love all kids the way we love our own. To love kids in cities we'll never visit. Kids whose names and cultures and traditions may differ from ours, we have to love them enough to fight for them just as fiercely as we fight for our own. We have to love them enough so that those who enjoy ample school funding in their districts will insist that schools in poor neighborhoods be funded just as well, or even better, in order to provide the kind of services children in poverty need in order to scale Maslow's hierarchy and meet the prerequisites of learning in the first place. Because they're Americans just like us. And together we depend on one another. We depend on America. School funding inequity has to stop, because their weakness is not my strength, and their poverty is not my wealth, and their pain is not my comfort. Their strength is my strength. Their richness is my richness. Their well-being is my well-being. We are in this together, and public schools are for all of us. The people made a promise, and we haven't forgotten it. We cling to it. It's written in every one of our state constitution. Alabama's constitution says the legislature shall establish, organize, and maintain a liberal system of public education throughout the state for the benefit of the children. And Arkansas says that intelligence and virtues are safeguards of liberty and the bulwark of a free and good government. Colorado says the state has to provide a thorough and uniform system of free public schools open to all residents. Those promises matter. Our ancestors were brave enough to make them. We have to be brave enough to keep them. We're told to give up on getting our states to do what they said they'd do so many years ago. We're urged to turn instead to free markets and corporations to deliver us the kind of education our kids deserve. This is a foolish trade. Free market schools have no obligation to serve all children, and the data shows that the charter chains and voucher schools don't serve all children. Competition doesn't breed excellence. If it did, our fast food restaurants would serve the healthiest food around. Competition breeds marketing and cost cutting. It breeds a desperate search for any and all competitive advantages. This ethic is toxic to education. Look at the for-profit colleges perpetrating scams on our veterans, giving them worthless educations in exchange for the GI Bill that we invested in them. For-profit K-12 education is already showing these same predatory tendencies. Competition-based school reform doesn't and won't live up to the mythology that says all schools will rise as they compete for kids. That's the rhetoric. When these schools have to compete for students, they'll all do a better job. Problem is, it's a lie. It hasn't happened anywhere it's been tried. From Chile to Sweden, Milton Friedman's ideas have failed to deliver equity or excellence. Yet we read the breathless accounts of the miracle schools published over and over again, and debunked over and over again, usually by the people in this room. But the claims keep coming like car commercials during a football game. These schools invariably rely on marketing to sing their praises. They rely on selectively published data to create the appearance of a rich education, and they rely on expulsions, attritions, and intimidating parent agreements to rid their rosters of students most likely to struggle on state tests. One of their most vocal advocates said it best: some kids just aren't the right fit. I repudiate that notion with every fiber of my being. Every last kid in America, black, white, brown, or purple, kids with gay parents and straight parents or no parents, kids who don't speak English, kids who don't speak at all, kids who can't walk or go to the bathroom, kids who have been abused, kids who have been loved, kids who love math and science, and kids who love art and play the trombone, kids who want to be welders and kids who love baseball, kids who just want a friend, kids who are lost and afraid, kids who just need love. Every last one of them is the right fit in our schools. These are our American children. They're the only ones we have. We're not holding back any of our children. These are our children. How dare you shake them out of your schools like so many dust particles? How dare the powers that be in our nation lift up a model of schooling that excludes any kid who needs and wants an education? How dare they possess the temerity to call these exclusionary principles the civil rights issue of our time? The whole thing is insane. And it benefits people in power suits, not the children of America. I'm not here speaking today because I'm sticking up for teachers' unions, no offense. That's what our critics always say. And they're careful to say teachers' unions, not teachers, because they know that America loves its teachers. Well, I don't belong to a teachers' union. I'm not even a teacher. I'm in management. And I live in a right-to-work state where unions can't strike. The union bogeyman won't work to dismiss these words of mine. I'm here speaking for one reason. I care about my country, I care about the future, and I love my children. Anything that weakens the public schools in the United States of America weakens the nation. Our future depends on our commitment to children more than anything else, and our commitment to children must extend to all children equally. A system of selective and exclusionary schools spanning from coast to coast and competing for kids is not what we promised. It's a lesser promise, and maybe today we're a lesser people with lesser ideals. Maybe we've given up on the optimism that we once had, an optimism that believed that we in America were special, and we had it within ourselves to create a society that was fair to all and would ensure that our children's tomorrows were richer and happier than our own yesterdays. I refuse to embrace that cynicism. I refuse to agree to the lesser promises of corporate education reform, and I will cling to the promises that were made so long ago. The Georgia State Constitution says, the provision of an adequate public education for the citizens shall be a primary obligation of the state of Georgia. A primary obligation. And you and I too, we have a primary obligation to demand that these promises be kept. Teachers and students have suffered for years under the burden of increasingly onerous state and federal education policies. A prevailing culture of teacher and student blaming, and a seemingly relentless campaign to reduce resources while increasing expectations. We must remind ourselves that we have the power to determine the future of education in the United States. When educators and the educated are empowered, education reform doesn't happen to them, it happens because of them. And today, with groups like this one, and so many others, all of which are so active in so many ways in so many parts of the country, we are standing on the threshold of the education spring. That sound you hear, getting louder as the days go by, it's called student voice, and it's called teacher voice. Education reform, it isn't their word anymore, it's our word. They're the corporate reformers, and they hate that phrase, and so we should keep using it. They're the corporate reformers, but we are the education reformers. We are the ones fighting to perfect public education, not to scrap it. The status quo is 30 years of shaming and blaming, testing, and then testing some more, defunding our schools, closing neighborhood schools instead of rushing to them with instructional help and facilities repairs and wraparound services. The status quo is a Pearson contract in Texas worth $500 million. The status quo is 6 full-time testing company lobbyists roaming the halls of our state house here in Austin. The status quo is non-educators serving as state education commissioners all over the country. Education chiefs who are overtly political animals serving their party instead of the children of the state. The status quo is half-baked algorithms that rate teachers on the test scores of students they never taught. The status quo is rampant education privatization. And they don't like that word either, so we should keep using it. They don't want us to say corporate, they don't want us to say privatization because they know that the people trust teachers 1 billion times more than they trust CEOs and their friends on Wall Street. The status quo is voucher schemes that keep getting struck down as unconstitutional and keep coming back. The status quo is a state inequitably funding education, investing fewer education dollars in poor neighborhoods where the kids need education the most, and investing more state funds in neighborhoods where the kids come from plenty. The status quo is a state attorney general spending state dollars to defend a lawsuit against these type of funding abuses, even though he and everybody else knows that it's wrong. To wrap up, we don't support the status quo. We are the reformers. We're here to shake up the education world, and our movement is only growing. This is our spring. This is our opportunity to go toe-to-toe with the people who have turned our kids' education into a sandbox for the rich and famous. With hedge funders desperate for a new investment bubble who give no thought to what their investments actually do to our nation. This is our chance to call out the Enrons of education, to go on record for democracy and against corporate malfeasance, so that when these scams crumble, and they will, we can say, we told you so. And we can say, we were on the right side of history. This is our opportunity to not back down, to be the supermen and superwomen American kids need, to put students first by fighting to preserve promises made to them. This is our chance to stand proudly with our communities and our neighborhoods and our students and parents and to say we support public education. This is our chance to stand united from coast to coast as teachers and students and parents to show the nation that the greater good is still real and is still worth fighting for if we don't give up and if we vote and we support pro-public education candidates for office, and if we ourselves run for office, we will see a change. Thank you.